Kia ora koutou. Very nice to be here and to be able to share my learnings from what I've done over the past 1 year. So I'm just going to share my presentation now. Right. So what I'm going to be talking about is so I've titled it Uncomplicating the Integration of UN SDGs into Management Education Degrees. And I think it's a good segue after what Sam has just discussed about the specialized degree in SDGs, and mindful that not all universities have the opportunity to set up specializations. So driven by that idea and the fact that in terms of scene setting, the reason I wanted to explore this research was because, we often talk that business schools and management schools have a big responsibility in terms of how they set the graduates, or if we are looking at experienced working people who are coming in to study, in terms of how we are setting up the mindset and the skills for future leaders, where we don't want to create future leaders similar to what happened during the global recession, where we saw a lot of greed that was demonstrated. But often the critical view is that we want leaders who are responsible and are making the right decisions. So driven by that idea, I started exploring and I came across the PRME, which is the Principles of Responsible Management Education. They were launched in 2007 with the intention to inspire management education around research and thought leadership. So the idea with the PRME framework was that management education is driven to lead or to support education, which is creating those responsible leaders. Now, over the past 14 odd years, the PRME signatories have grown significantly. So at this point in time, when I was looking at it in 2020, there were around 800 signatories across 90 countries. So what are these PRME principles? What I've done is I try to put it on this slide, but might not be quite visible. So I'm trying to zoom in. So when you look at the PRMEs, you can see that there are some core principles that have been set up. So if you become a signatory, you're trying to work within this framework or establish your education through that. You're looking at number one, purpose, which is you're looking to work with students and develop capabilities within them for sustainability, and looking at the sustainable global economy rather than just focusing on individual business. You are trying to drive values, which is the principle number two, around global social responsibility, again, driven by the idea of UN SDGs. You are then moving on to principle number three, which is you looking at frameworks, which is the method part of it, around what are the frameworks, what are the materials and the processes and environments you are going to provide within the institution to enable that. Principle four is about research. How are you creating or engaging in research that will advance the understanding or the dynamics that are associated with creating impact around sustainable social, environmental, and economic value? The last two are probably my most favorite ones, which focus around partnership. How much are you interacting with business corporations to exchange knowledge and to challenge their existing knowledge bases? And the last one is dialogue, around how are you facilitating and supporting debate and dialogue among not just researchers or academics, around educators, businesses, governments. So it's a stakeholder ecosystem approach that you're trying to take in this principle of trying to work within dialogue. So the question was, are these sufficient to drive the change that is needed in management education? So what I then tried to do was look at existing academic literature around what is actually available out there around the PRMEs, what sort of guidance is already available around implementation or working within the PRME framework, and then what about the UN SDGs? How are these supported within the PRME framework? And the last bit was, is the PRME sufficient to drive the change that is needed? So in order to do that, what I did over the past few past 1 year was looked at a multiple case study and examined 3 PRME champion institutions from a period of 2015 to 2020. And the reason being 2015 to 2020 was that was when the reports were available. And we examined 3 PRME champion institutions across 3 different continents to see how the practice is varying across the continents. So what did we find? So this is more of a show and tell around what was being done in these 3 different institutions or higher education institutions. One was that their implementation of the PRME focused on adding value. So driven by the principles, they focused on increasing value. The other one was around providing tools for maximizing sustainability. And I'm going to come to sharing some examples in here, which related to how the Institute was supporting matters related to improving sustainability. Then we are talking about making sustainability as the core of a business model for teaching and learning, and also around connecting with stakeholders. So those last 2 principles of dialogue and partnership were I could see them come through quite significantly in those examples. So just to quote a few specific examples of what I found when we're talking about purpose 1, which related to the idea of purpose. The first principle, what the institutions were doing, and I'm just looking through my notes here, was that across the 3 institutions, what we saw was there was initiatives that were implemented, which included establishing awards, because they wanted to establish what's called as reimagination of education. So they went ahead and implemented programs which supported the reimagination of the whole idea of education, and they allowed awards to be allocated to staff in the institutions. There was one specific institution which went ahead and got their business information students to actually go ahead and work on projects which would support people with disabilities and allow them to engage in different activities. In relation to values, what I found was that the core around values within the institution, there was one specific example around internationalization of curriculum project. Now, again, this was driven by the idea that because institutions currently are globally placed, they wanted to emphasize diversity across their education, hence the internationalization of their curriculum. And they initiated a project across the institution to actually internationalize their curriculum. With principle number 3, which was around method, one of the key things that while you do have business institutions running the courses around ethics, legal practices, and applied management capabilities, and the impact of various aspects or on sustainability. But what I also found was there were specific master's and PhD level courses or PhDs modules that were created to create a specialized focus which looked at tackling world problems, and that was quite different. In terms of research, many of the 3 institutions that I looked at, there was establishment of research clusters. Again, the idea of goal number 17 coming very significantly here around partnership for the goals, because they could see that within their academic institution, they had a lot of people who were focusing on specific areas of the SDGs, so they allowed people to come together. In terms of partnership, what I could see in the 3 institutions was they started to engage more with the communities. Now, if this was previously happening, it's just that they have used the report that they provided on the PRME as an opportunity to highlight that. And there was links with the Chamber of Commerce. There were more interactions with younger individuals. They initiated aspects such as the social entrepreneur conferences for the youth, because they understand that youth are very critical to the delivery of the SDGs. The other aspect that was there was they also initiated challenge weeks where they would have awards given out for a co-creation of solutions that are needed for the SDG implementation. So having looked at these specific examples, and being an academic, it's always important to look at what the critics are saying. What often the critics have said is that because it is a voluntary reporting process, people are just what often we hear the word greenwashing. Is that what is happening with academia when they are reporting voluntarily because there are no benchmarks that are provided to them? And the other argument has been, is this rather conditioning of the students rather than nurturing critical reflexivity within the students to actually critically look at a problem, get engaged in that dialogue and debate when we start to look at the SDGs through the PRMEs. So what does the future hold? Again, taking a look at what the critics have said and also looking at the co-creation of goals is possibly the most important aspect here, and then looking at it as a stakeholder ecosystem approach is absolutely essential. So thank you for listening. I have gone a little bit over time, I understand, so I'm going to stop now. Thank you, Kirsten.